So we are recording, and you guys will get a copy of the recording. I'm also going to share a link with y'all. If somebody that does not have a Coding Dojo email could please open the link and make sure that you guys have access to it. And if you don't, let me know. But it should be good. I put the link in the chat, by the way, sorry. Looks good. Like awesome. Good. Awesome. Good to hear. Okay. Perfect. So we're going to be using these throughout the class today, both the morning and the afternoon, some more than others. Let me go ahead and share my screen and bring up the presentation. Let's go over there. All right. So welcome everybody to the Azure Fundamentals class. This is the AZ-900. I'm assuming that all of you guys are alumni, correct?
Yeah, I am.
So congratulations for graduating Coding Dojo then. That's awesome, an awesome achievement. My name is Melissa. I teach on the part-time side, the part-time accelerated program. Currently teaching web fundamentals this month. I'll be going over to Python next month. Will heads up our Azure classes, but he also teaches on the part-time side. Are you Flex or is Accelerated? I can't remember.
I am Accelerated.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to introduce myself. My name is Will. I'm going to be joining you actually for the afternoon session. We're going to break this up and you'll see a schedule here in a little bit to where we have a lunch break, basically, obviously refuel. We're going to be learning a lot today, just really fundamentals of the cloud, why a company would move to the cloud, all about how Microsoft's cloud helps companies' businesses. And I'm going to be doing the afternoon session, so I won't be with you for the morning, but I just wanted to hop in here and introduce myself. Like Melissa said, I am an instructor with the part-time team, and I also head all of the Azure workshops for Microsoft. We have 3 of them. You guys are in the AZ-900, which is my favorite. It really is the fundamentals of the cloud. And so if you don't have any cloud knowledge, this is going to be a really insightful workshop for you to really understand why a company would move there. We also have 2 more. One's the AI-900, which is our artificial intelligence, really using Microsoft's cloud and their tools to work with artificial intelligence. If that's something you're interested in, if you really love Python or data science, it's a great one for you. And then the second one is our DP-900. Now that's our data. And initially when I say data, people who do web applications are like, oh, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not a data scientist. But all we really talk about in that one is how we would handle data within the cloud, whether it's a relational database or a non-relational database. If you guys took Python, you know what a relational database is when you use SQL or MySQL or SQLite, whichever one you used. And if you took MERN, you know what a non-relational database is, right? And unstructured data using a MongoDB. And so it actually really is insightful for those who are doing web applications, because your application is going to have a database, most likely. And so it's just really learning how the cloud will handle that data and what you can do there. So it's a really great one. We do these every Wednesday. So next Wednesday is the AI-900, and then the following Wednesday is the DP-900. So if you are interested in any of those, you'll still continue to get emails. So just want to introduce myself, and that is kind of who I am.
All right, awesome. So we'll go to the next slide. All right, so these are just some of the ground rules. So respect each other, respect myself. Oh no, wait, that sounded wrong. Respect me and each other. There we go. And some of the other things that we, teamwork always makes the dream work. That's an old saying, but and strength through struggle. Since you guys have always, since you guys have all graduated from Coding Dojo, I'm sure that you know that line very well. I'm sure you've struggled quite a bit. And through that, you've grown as a person, as a developer. So there really is strength through struggle. And it's not something we always think about, but the more we struggle, sometimes the stronger we get with certain things. So it's something to keep in mind. Helps if I click on my screen. Whoops, there we go. All right, so this is like I said, this is today. Today is September 15th. The time is in Pacific time is now until roughly about 4:30 this afternoon. And we're going to have discussions and some exercises. I do welcome you to raise your hand or go ahead and speak up if you have questions. Feel free to type in the chat if you would prefer to do it that way. Although being alumni, I do recommend that you do speak up, get you more practice. Maybe not in the coding interview aspect of things, but just speaking up in general. A lot of people have trouble speaking in public. Although it's a Zoom meeting, it's still kind of considered public and some people have problems with that. So I do recommend giving it a shot if you can, if you have questions, that is. Okay, so the workshop, as you are aware, is free to all alumni, and there is not a limited number of participants here. Anybody who attends this workshop today and goes through till the end will receive a 50% off voucher towards the certification for this course. So the exam is $100, so that's a $50 savings, which is an awesome deal. And the vouchers will be given via email. After everything is done, so you'll probably get the email either late today or tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to get everything uploaded and situated out. If you guys could do me a favor, just to make sure, if y'all could put your email addresses and names in the chat for me, just so we have a log of everybody who was here, that would be super helpful. That way we can just make sure that everybody's accounted for as being present here in the meeting. And Will might do something later on this afternoon just to make sure that you guys are here in the afternoon session as well. But it's always nice to have that little extra log in there. Awesome. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. All right, so this is our agenda for the morning. So we're going to go over a basic introduction of what is the cloud. We'll take a good 15-minute break. Unless we go through it really quickly, we might take like maybe a 20-minute break. I don't know. Then we'll have a group activity, which is part of that link that I shared earlier on, which I will share it again, so don't worry. Then we're going to actually present the group activity. You guys are going to be split up into teams. So you guys are going to be working together in breakout rooms. And then at around noon Pacific time, we will break for lunch. So for us East Coast people, that's around 3 o'clock. So here's the resources that we're going to be using throughout the course. For this morning, the resources that we're going to be using are this link here, which is the part 1 of the Azure concepts. I'll go ahead and put those in the chat for y'all. And then this one. And then part 3. And if I remember correctly, you guys do get a copy of the slides. So if you don't have the links now, that's fine. I just figured I'd give them to you in case you guys want to look through the links as I'm going through things. Go back to that one. All right. And the content on Microsoft's is always updating all the time. So it's a good thing to, it's nice to bookmark that stuff and go through it again every once in a while just to see what might have changed. So as Will had mentioned, these are the current opportunities that we have here at Coding Dojo. We are in the AZ-900 class. The AI class, I believe he said was next week, or is it the data one that was next week? I think AI is next week, and then the week after that is the DP-900. This one is geared more toward, not geared more towards data science, but like he said, it does have relevancy to the us web people. But it does have some, it is data centric. So I'm going to do the AI one eventually. I think it's fun. These are some other opportunities that are available on Microsoft. Some of these, we have them broken down for you so you can see roughly which area of programming they pertain to. Does anybody have any questions about these, about the certifications available to you guys, what we have and then the next level ones.
Yeah, quick question. Did you say at all that we're gonna do AZ-204 in the future, or was it just AI and database?
Right now we do these three, the AZ-900 AI and DP.
Okay, okay.
Yep. Eventually we are going to add some other ones, I'm sure, but right now these are the other ones that are available on Microsoft's, but we have not started doing any of these yet.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Good question. All right, so here's our learning objectives, at least for the morning, is we're going to learn about the cloud and how to demystify it. And then once you, in the afternoon, you guys are going to do some practice exams with Will, as well as some other, another group activity. Pay attention to those practice exams. They are pretty good exams, some good questions, but some of the questions can be a little tricky, so you got to read them. It's kind of like going back to high school and remembering, oh yeah, they're trying to trick me. Got it. It's those type of questions. So just read the questions good. But upon achieving those any of these certifications, you guys get to showcase them on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, social media, and it looks really good for employers. Having these certifications, especially if an employer is thinking about or just recently moved to using the cloud and Azure platforms, then this is going to be huge for you, because that means you have at least a more recent knowledge of what's going on and maybe can help them demystify themselves, so to speak. One of the other things was that source link right there is the potential on the market. Pull this up over here. Oop, did I grab the wrong one?
Hey, Becky, what's up?
There it is. So here's where the potentials are. Those that have the Azure versus AWS versus cloud in general, Azure seems to rank a little bit higher. The cloud in general does rank high for just for jobs. So having this training will absolutely 100% help, because we do go through the cloud. Go back. Oh, I apparently closed out of my presentation. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. All right. There we go. So this is the learning path. There are no real basic skills, so to speak, that are required. But we do suggest that you, of course, go through all the course material. We're going to go through quite a bit of that during this during today. I apologize, my mouth is not working right now. So by the time you guys finish today, you guys will be ready to take the exam and pass it. So we're going to describe cloud concepts first, then some Azure services, some core solutions and management skills, general security and network security features, identity, and all these other types of features as well as cost management and service agreements. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with the cloud concepts. So how does the internet actually work? Can anyone give me a base, very simple description of how the internet works?
I don't mind taking a crack at it.
Sure, go for it.
So to me, this is how the internet works. There's a bunch of there's like a bunch of cables that are underground that are pretty much all over the world, that are all connected in some type of way or form, and they send data through each other. So say if I'm going to facebook.com and their server is in like if their server is in like California, it's a little bit easier for me to connect because it's right there. But if I'm doing like another company that's like further away, there's like maybe like in Japan or something, it's going to take time because the data needs to travel. That's kind of how I.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're definitely not wrong.
Oh yeah, I'm not wrong. I'm just not fully correct.
Yep. Nope. Communication between computers and networks. That's a good one too. I like that. So I've got a couple images that, and sometimes I show these in my web fundamentals classes, but I like to show this. So basically, it starts with you, the user. You guys talk to an ISP or your internet provider, and then it goes out to the world. And the world says, okay, they are asking for, like you said, Facebook. So I'm going to go to the nearest server that has that information, and I'm going to throw them back the information. And that's it. For the most part, I mean, on a very basic level, that is what's going on. However, there is more going on. Your computer, the internet, they're all talking to each other. There's packets being passed back and forth, all this other stuff. It's fun. Actually getting into the nitty gritty of the packets and stuff like that, we don't necessarily need to know that part of it. But Facebook.com, can your computer actually understand what Facebook.com it means?
No.
No, it can't. It understands ones and zeros. So that IP address that you guys see, or like that local host that you guys see whenever you guys are running a server, that's what your computer understands. So when you guys make a phone call, 9 times out of 10 nowadays, do you guys actually put the phone number in? No, we click a name. That name is Facebook.com, and our phone translates that to an actual number. Yes, Facebook.com is way easier to remember than the IP address. A whole lot easier. Just like our phone numbers, it's a whole lot easier to remember dial Melissa instead of dialing this 10-digit code. So every web application, every server has its own unique IP address. Now, just for a little bit of a deeper dive for you, because I did work with a hosting company at one point, the IP address leads to the server. On the server, there are folders, and folders point to typically like your website. So if I were to remote into your desktop, that's an IP address that I would need. Once I'm at that IP address, I need to know where to go. Where do you have your website located? What folder is it in? And where is the base file? That's something else that these computers have to know. And that's buried in the packets. All these, all those packets and stuff like that. That is very true. All the packets that get sent back and forth, if you ever heard that there's packet loss in the signal, things like that, that's some of the stuff that gets lost in transition, is some of the basic information other than the IP address, which is a bad thing when there's packet loss, as you can understand. Because if I don't know to go to the documents folder, to the coding dojo folder, web fundamentals, then how do I know that that's where the website is located? Because your website is tied to that specific folder. Here's another way. I guess I have a couple pictures of just to look at it. There's a lot of back and forth going on. Here's one that is kind of a big, broad one. Your home router has all these things, the subnet mask, all that stuff. That's all part of these packets that are getting passed back and forth. Like I said, it all goes to your local ISP, and then it goes to like the big ISP of the World Wide Web, so to speak, which everybody can access. There are cables underground, of course, that helps travel this thing, but it does go to the nearest server first, pulls back what information it can. If you've ever been told to clear your cache, does anybody know why you have to clear that? Or what the cache even does on your
Like
computer?
local?
What's that?
You clear it because it's like your local data or something?
Kind of. It's a good way to put it.
it stores information that was previously used on websites, and and sometimes it will have when the websites or servers update, you need to clear your cache to actually be able to go in there with a fresh browser.
Yep, exactly. So every time you go to a website, your browser takes a mini snapshot of what the website looks like at that very moment in time. So then the next time you call it up, it'll load. When I used to work at this at this hosting company, I used to have people call in all the time and say, hey, my website's not working. Or people are saying my website's not working, but I can see it. I'm like, okay, but have you cleared your cache? I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, yeah, it does. I was like, how about this? Turn off your Wi-Fi and try, or not turn off your Wi-Fi, clear your cache or go incognito and try to look at your website. And when they do that and all of a sudden it doesn't work, it's because they were viewing a cached version and it didn't go out to fetch a new version. Most of the time when you hit refresh, it does go out to the server and get a new version. Sometimes you have to do a hard reset or a hard reload. So if you're ever having problems with your CSS, do a hard reload, that's probably your problem. It just didn't go fetch the new data. So that's why we have to clear our cache, because it doesn't always go and fetch the new data. But the cache is handy because it allows us to bring up sites that we frequent often slightly quicker while it goes and gets any fresh data. I think that's the last image. Nope. Oh, this is the breakdown. This is what I had for a breakdown of what the URL actually means. So this right here is going to tell me the IP address in computer language. This part here is going to tell me the location of the folders or other pages within it. So most likely in the root folder of where this website lays, there's a folder called wiki, and inside that there's a file called node.js. Any questions about roughly how the internet works? I could go way deeper, but I'm not going to. So like you said, I can't remember who it was earlier. There are tons of cables all over the place. Luckily, it does try to find the shortest path of least resistance to find it. Sometimes it has to take the long way around, you know, for Africa. They get the long way around to things. All right, so the cloud. What is the cloud? According to the slide here, we have that the cloud refers to software and services that run on the internet instead of locally on your computer. So can I host my website on my computer? Is that physically possible?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to give you the link, I'd probably have to do some things for you to be able to see it and access it because it's internal to my home network. I'd have to do something called a port forwarding to allow that port that I serve my website on access to the outside world outside of my router. But yeah, I could absolutely host my website on my own computer, but why would I? Why would I want to have my computer on 24/7 just to have my website up and running? That could be a true statement. You are correct. Yep. Well, the cloud is not, so like there's hosting companies and then there's the cloud. They are two different things. A hosting company is a company that runs a bunch of servers. So they're basically just a big house of servers, where the cloud is a bunch of servers connected to each other, but they're just like in buildings all over the place, but they all talk to each other. So hosting, like a hosting company like A2 Hosting, for example, it has its own internal servers to itself. I'm trying to think of another host company. GatorHost or GoDaddy. GoDaddy and A2 Hosting's servers do not talk to each other than through the World Wide Web to go get things. That's it. They don't talk directly to each other. Cloud servers, on the other hand, do talk to each other. They can be located in many different places, but they all have some sort of connection with each other so that if one goes down, the other can pick up the load. And it makes things a lot easier. Azure is a cloud computing service that's created by Microsoft, and it's meant to manage these things, and they're Microsoft managed data centers. They're just a bunch of data centers. It's really cool the way everything works. Let me pull up the other page. So if I come in here, if I can find the one I want, this one. So you're a company and you want to host some websites, or you have websites that you need hosting, or you have applications that you run. In terms of, just a bit quick guess, in terms of cost, does it sound like it would be cheaper to use the cloud or to have internal servers?
The cloud.
Why?
Internal servers, you have a lot of data costs going out to building out your servers. You don't know exactly how many servers you need, or how powerful they need to be. So if you build out your system and you don't have enough, then you're going to have to go buy more. If you buy a lot more and then you don't utilize them all, then you have them laying around not doing anything. Whereas the cloud, you should be able to be relative to how much you need. You should be able to spend up more than if you need more, or stop some from running if you don't need that much, allowing you to be a lot more in control of the cost.
Yep, absolutely 100%. And there's also that last one that William just put up is labor cost. Just out of curiosity, does anybody know how to run a server in here besides myself?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. So how easy is it to maintain a server? Just one server. It's not too bad, right?
One server isn't bad. I mean,
yeah, it's not too bad, but that's one server, and but you have to have that knowledge as well. If you don't know how to run a server in terms of the actual equipment and how to maintain said equipment, you're already adding cost right from the get-go, because you need to have somebody go to school to learn how to do it, or hire somebody to take care of your equipment for you. Where with the cloud, we don't have any of that. Somebody else is already taking care of that. And what's really awesome about Azure is 9 out of 10 of the models are pay as you go, which means if you don't use it, you don't pay for it. And you get complete control over many of the things and features that you have. It's a really awesome model, and it's actually very intuitive on how to set things up. It's really nice. So cloud computing is like it has right here. It's a way to rent your computer power. I love that phraseology of computer power. And storage from somebody else, instead of having your own data center, because that is quite high on the electric bill. There's a lot of maintenance, and it's not just the power consumption of the actual servers in the data center, but you also have to chill those things, because those things get hot. And you have to have a whole separate room for it, and the cables are just bonkers, and it's a lot. But instead, we can just rent them from somebody else. Why not? It sounds like a good idea. But you can treat, with Azure, you can treat them like they're your own, because you have some dedicated space When you're done using them, you just give them back, just like your modem from the internet company. It's yours while you're using it. When you're done, you give it back. No overhead, like somebody said earlier, makes things a lot nicer and a lot cleaner and allows you to start up things a lot quicker. I do like how somebody else said your technical footprint is smaller. And that is very true. Your technical footprint is smaller because these data centers that you're renting from, they're already there. So you're not adding to that technical footprint. You're just tapping into it. So the nice thing about these is, like I said, we don't maintain them. Azure does, or whoever they have to do it. You know, they maintain the data centers. If they need software updates, they do it. Although there are times where you can do some of the software updates, depending on what type of services you decide or your company gets. There are certain things that allow you to update softwares or keep software at a certain level. But the actual servers themselves, they update them, they maintain them. So what is Azure? Like we said it is, sorry, excuse me. It is continuously innovating. It's constantly changing. They're always adding to it. It's open source, which is really nice. So you can help contribute to it and people can contribute, other people can contribute to it. There are some hybrid things where there are some on-premises things, but they always have, Azure is very good about keeping up with the times and giving you the option to have products that you need or want. And you can have that freedom, like it has up here, to build and manage and deploy these applications on a global level, not just a local level. So sure, big boy out there, you know, the big man out there, he probably has tons of money to spend on making his own data center. But it may not be as efficient as Azure's frameworks, data centers, all that stuff might be. So here's the different options like we were talking about. There's those two options, the on-premise and the cloud. The company houses all the servers locally and everything is done in-house. There is a time and a place for it. I don't say that it's a bad idea. I think there's certain things that could be housed internally. If it's a proprietary, maybe you want it internally, but there are ways to put that in the cloud and keep it proprietary as well. The cloud, as we said, the company uses the service to somebody else just to house all the services. And we did put an honorable mention, which is the hybrid option, which is a combination of the two, of course. Me personally, when I start my business eventually one year, hopefully before I die, I'm going to start it on the cloud because I'm going to start it out of my house. So I'm not building a data center in my house. I'm already trying to take care of too much stuff now. I don't need to deal with that too. So here are the biggest benefits, thank you, of the cloud. It's highly available. It's scalable. It's elastic, as in you can expand it. You can, you know, scale back if you need to. Well, that's scalability, but you can always expand as you need to, or you can expand in a certain way and come back in another. Agility, geo-distribution, disaster, and recovery. One of my favorite things about the cloud, one of my other favorite things about the cloud is also that disaster thing. If I'm building my own business and I have my own data center and a hurricane hits, well, I'm in Pennsylvania, so that probably wouldn't happen. I don't know, a massive storm hits and knocks me out. I might have just lost a whole lot of data. People's information, if I had people's information stored on it, is gone. People's orders, I don't know, whatever, depending on what my business is, all that's gone. If my data center gets flooded, for example, it's gone. It's just done. With the cloud, yes, of course, one data center might get flooded, but there's redundancy and there's backups. So everything gets redundantly backed up on multiple different data centers. So if one data center does get flooded and goes down, guess what? Your stuff's still safe on a different data center or at a different location. And that's where the geo distribution also comes in, is that it distributes your information so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. It's throughout the world, which makes things a lot harder to get lost that way. You'd think it wouldn't get lost, because I'm sorry, but in my brain, everything has to be in one basket, but that's my brain. So I'm not going to be able to find it if it's, you know, upstairs and downstairs and stuff like that. I need to have it all in the same room. But data doesn't work that way, thank God. So the high availability, and this is depending on what service you actually decide to do. Your cloud-based apps can provide a continuous user experience with no downtime when things go wrong. And that's because of that whole multiple data center thing. So if we go back over here, this one, that's the marketplace. Oh, those are all the services. Nope, didn't want to do that. Nope, didn't want to do that either. I'll find it in a second. Hang on. They have a really good picture on here somewhere. I think it's this one. Nope, that is the cloud models. Okay. So like I said, it is high availability. They have, it's constantly up and running because they have all those redundancy data centers in place. Oops. Scalability. You can increase the compute capacity by adding RAM or CPU to your virtual machines. We've all played with, I think at one time, a virtual environment of one sort or another. If you did not take Python, but you are a MERN student, when you run your React app, that is your virtual environment. You have to download certain, like you have to download Axios or npm install Axios, things like that. Those dependencies, that becomes your virtual environment. So you can increase your capacity by adding RAM or CPUs, or you can add more instances, such as like resources, or just adding multiple virtual machines to the configuration. So if we have one app that has this virtual machine, maybe it needs, part of this app needs a different type of virtual environment or something to that effect. For example, we can start up another virtual environment if we had to. Virtual machines are just literally that, they're virtual, they're machines. But you can increase them in multiple ways, whether in resources or actual power. You can configure these apps to take advantage of just about everything. You can make sure that they have the right resources that they need. If app A needs these resources, but app B doesn't need half of those, then you can make sure that it's configured that way so that it's not using more resources than it needs. If you're downloading like a React app, why download Axios if you're not going to do an API call? That's a node module folder that you don't need, that takes up space on your computer, for example. Or if you're doing a Python app and you're doing Django, for example, if you have no login, why are you going to download bcrypt? You don't need to pip install bcrypt, not doing a login. That's another folder or resource that you have that isn't being used and is taking up space. So that's what this is referring to, is you can make sure that your apps have the right resources that they need, but not too many. You can easily deploy and configure your cloud-based apps as quickly as your apps change. I believe everybody here, especially if you've done Python with Django, you've all deployed at least one app. I believe, I can't remember if MERN does it or not. but I believe you've deployed an app through AWS. I know the Django deploys through AWS. So I believe everybody's had experience with logging into the AWS machines, correct? That virtual machine there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. AWS is another form of a cloud service. Logging into that virtual machine locally is so much better than saying, oh, I need to update this app. I better go into the office, log into this computer, update where I need to update, and then hit deploy or whatever deploy is for that app. We have that ability to do it right from any computer, just like we do with AWS. But Azure is on a bigger scale than AWS. You can always deploy apps and data to the data centers that are regional to you, which allows everybody. So I'm here on the East Coast. So when I deploy my apps, they're probably going to be on a fairly East Coast based or a closer to East Coast based data center to start with. However, once one of you guys out in California opens up my app, that's being ported over to a data center over there on the West Coast. Now my app's over there as well. So now I've just distributed it to 2 different data centers, basically. And then when somebody in Japan, that'd be awesome if somebody picked up my app in Japan, but that's never going to happen. Now there's something over there. That's how the geo distribution helps. It always starts with where you start it. And then as people open things up, it gets copied. I mean, it gets copied naturally anyways, but it gets really copied once people start opening it in those different locations, and it allows you to share it better. Does anybody have any questions so far? Are we good? You guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
I'm just
don't have
making
any
sure.
questions.
Okay, I'm just making sure because it looked my video froze, or the picture of my video froze. So I'm just like, am I still actually really there? All right. So disaster recovery, like I said before, taking advantage of these backup services and data replication and geo distribution. We know that in the event of a disaster, our stuff is good to go. That's why I will start out on the cloud, because I will probably end up screwing up my own server, even though I've run a server before. I'd probably still end up screwing it up and wipe everything. I'd be my own disaster. So a lot of people think that this would be more expensive, but as we already discussed, it is based off of a consumption-based model or a pay-as-you-go model. You pay for what you use, and that's it. As we had already talked about, if I were to start a business, and I'd have to buy the servers, the physical devices, servers themselves, all the cables to be connected. I'd have to get the internet. I'd have to get all this stuff. I'd have to know how to hook it all up, download all the applications that it needs to have at the bare minimum. You know, there's a lot that goes into setting up a data center, and that would take up way too much time when I can just use the cloud and get it up and running. And since it's consumption based, it's already there. It's already ready to go. All I have to do is tap into it. Kind of like, why reinvent the wheel? It's already there for me. Just reuse it. Maybe make it better. So the cost of operation. There's 2 different things: capital expenditure versus operational expenditure. Does anybody have any idea what either of these are?
Well, operational expenditure would be like your electricity, your labor costs, and everything like that. And then the other is more like the physical hardware and stuff like that.
Yeah. Also, another way to look at it is capital is startup, operational is day-to-day. So capital is the upfront spending. the physical infrastructure, then you have to deduct the upfront costs that are over time, all that stuff. So it also reduces over time. So when I buy those servers, their value is going to decrease over time. Everybody knows that when you drive that brand spanking new car off the lot, its value drops instantly. Maybe not a lot, but it does drop. Same thing with devices. You know, that $600 iPhone or however much they are now, once you purchase it, it's not worth $600 anymore. It's probably worth 500. I don't know. I don't know how much it would actually drop. I'm not an iPhone user, so I don't know. But you guys understand what I'm getting at. So the capital expenditure is that upfront spending to start everything off. It's those physical things. It's usually also those one-time costs. As opposed to operational, this is how, this is what you spend on like a daily or monthly or yearly basis. It's not upfront necessarily. It's how you keep things going. So that electrician that you have to have come in every once in a while to double check your things. The IT guys that keep your data center running nice and smooth or fix it when it breaks. You know, you got to keep them on tap there. So that's the operational expenditure. So this is one way of looking at the two different ones. I love the iceberg thing because it's those hidden costs that always kill you. So on premises, at first, you're going to have the software and the licensing costs, but that hidden stuff is all that customization, the hardware, the IT guys, the maintenance, the training. That's all that stuff you don't expect to have right away, or not necessarily. It's not something you're aware of necessarily that you would have to have right away. Where with cloud computing, you have the subscription fees. Yeah, it looks like it's a little bit higher. But look at that hidden fee. There really isn't much. It's just the implementation, customization, and training. You guys are going through the training now, so you guys got that done. So a lot of this training is taken care of for your next employer. Cost gone. They just have to pay for the subscriptions and the fees for the actual cloud computing, as opposed to getting all this stuff and then making sure
Melissa,
it's maintained. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. It's still on geo distribution slide. I know we have problems in class with it freezing.
Which one is it on?
Geo distribution.
I don't see that slide. Let me do this one. Let me try this. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Hang on. I'm trying. Can you still hear me at least?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Alright.
we
It's the live transcript that does this to me. So share screen. All right, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why it keeps doing this. Let me try. It might kick me out for a second, but I promise I'll be right back. It is, if I do this, it should be this one. All right, there we go. Okay, so this was the slide that I was on. I apologize, of my iceberg. On premises versus cloud computing. The subscription fees, they might be a little bit higher at first in the software and the licensing, but there's a lot less hidden underneath the water, so to speak. These ongoing costs on premise is a whole lot more than these ongoing costs for cloud computing. I gotta bring it back up again. This is driving me crazy. Okay. There we go. All right. So here are the different, does anybody have any questions about this one before I go any further? Or does this make sense as to why, which one looks better?
Makes sense.
All right, so let me take a look. So this is going to be part of the group exercise that we're going to be doing after our break. So we're going to go over some of these now so you guys are ready for the group exercise. So infrastructure as a service is a service model that is closest to managing physical servers without actually having them, meaning that Azure will keep up the hardware, but the operating system maintenance and network configuration is up to us. So what operating system do we have? Making sure that that operating system is the most up to date, and the actual configuration of some of the networking inside of it, that's up to us. But the actual maintaining of the servers, that's up to Azure.
And I'm guessing Azure is compliant with all the different security protocols out there.
Yep. And we'll also cover some of that as well. Platform as a service is like a model, kind of like a managed hosting environment. So the Azure manages all the virtual machines and the networking resources, and we just deploy the applications. So that's like a hosting company like GoDaddy. All we do is we rent the space and we upload our material and they take care of it from there. That's what platform as a service is kind of like. Software as a service, Azure would maintain all aspects of the environment and the virtual machines, all that stuff. We just have to provide the data. So it's kind of the same thing, but this is a little bit more, I don't want to say intrusive, but Azure controls a little bit more of it for us. So it's a little bit less that we need to do. So everything here in green-ish is stuff that we manage ourselves or the business would manage. And blue would be what Azure would manage. Obviously on-premise, that's going to be all us. The infrastructure, this is what we would have to take care of. We control who has access, what applications, the runtime, the OS, and we maintain and we work on the virtual machines. They deal with the computing power, the networking, and the storage. Platform as a service, obviously you can see a lot more is on our shoulders. We deal with the data and the applications. They take care of everything else. Whereas software as a service, we just deal with just strictly the data and access, who has access to these services and stuff like that. And depending on the type of business would determine what type of infrastructure you would want. A small mom and pop business, probably, unless they're a really technical savvy person, they're probably going to go with software as a service. A medium-sized business, depending on how technical savvy they are and depending on what they're doing, maybe they want platform. Big boy, probably going to go for infrastructure. So it all depends on the size of the business sometimes, but it really depends on what you're also doing as a business. Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm sorry if you already answered this, but for like the platform as a service and software as a service, if we don't, do we have any access to the stuff in the blue? Like, if we look at like our applications and our virtual machine and the software as a service, or do we not have any access to that at all? We only have access to the green.
I think we can look, if I remember correctly, we can look at it, but we can't control it. So we can't make any changes to it. We can just look at it, potentially.
Okay, so we still have access to see the information and stuff. We just can't really mess with it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So where do we, what, this is like where you guys go on the cloud, what's out there, things like that. Understanding everything. I forget what I was going to do for this slide. So I'll skip it for now. I'll go back to it. All right. So we've all done this, right? We've all deployed a project and most likely used this process in some way, shape, or form. Unless you are doing React, I don't believe deploying through AWS does these two for React. It's been a while since I deployed through AWS.
It does.
It does?
It's
Okay, I
still-
couldn't remember.
I believe it still uses Gunicorn and Nginx.
I call it G Unicorn because it's more fun. And I call this one Nginx because it's more fun. I know it's not right, but it makes it fun for me. So here's just some other some examples of like an enterprise business or something like that. They're still going to use Git and stuff like that. But some of this stuff is going to be automated for them. It'll automatically deploy. Unit tests. I hate unit tests. Testing is, oh, I hate it. It's there, but there's always the beta version or the alpha version, some people call it, pre-production and then production and then monitoring. So these are just some of the steps that a business would have to go through getting their applications or whatever up online and out for the public to use. Let me come back, let me exit out of this really quick. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Over here, this one. All right, so the different cloud services, we'll go through those really quick again. Are these three basic ones right here. Here's another good picture of what each one controls. And we'll have, this will also go through what has upfront costs, what doesn't, things like this. So infrastructure as a service has the most flexibility. It allows the user or the business to have the most control over everything instead of just buying the hardware. There's no upfront costs. The agility as an applications can be made accessible pretty quickly. There's shared responsibility. The user maintains the services that they've provisioned and the cloud maintains the infrastructure. It is OpEx, as in consumption based. They only pay for what they need. Not a whole lot of skill is required to deploy and gain some benefits. And they still can use some of the skills and expertise of the cloud provider. Oh, did I get these backwards? No, I didn't. I did get them backwards in my head. That's okay. I was thinking of something else. Sorry. Flexibility, like I said, it's the most flexible and you have the most control over what the hardware you're using and things like that and the operating system. So, and it's what? Platform as a service. Same benefits, but there's some extra ones to be aware of. It's a little bit more agile. They don't need to configure the servers to run applications because the cloud will do that for them. It is still a pay-as-you-go. Not a whole lot of deep technical skills either for this one as well. You can take advantage of the skills of the expertise of the cloud a little bit more so that your workload is slightly less as a business. And you have access to some more cutting edge development tools and you can apply them throughout the life cycle of your applications. Productivity is the biggest difference with infrastructure versus platform, is that the business can then focus on the application development more because the cloud handles the platform development or management. So that means we can be more focused as a business on what we're trying to put out and publish to the world. Some of the disadvantages is there are some limitations to the cloud platform, which can affect how applications run. And that's just because there's slightly less flexibility in terms of what we have available to us in this structure. So you have to understand, are those limitations, are those like not being able to control the operating system? Is that something that I can live with as a business? Is that something that I can work around? So software as a service is centrally hosted and managed for you. It's usually one size fits all for most customers. Because it's kind of like the baseline, I guess you could say. There's still no upfront costs. You can provide staff as a business to access the software easily. It is pay as you go. No skills needed. The flexibility is they can access the same application from everywhere. The disadvantage again with this one is going to be those software limitations. Because you're using as is software, you don't have as much control over some of the features that it has. So if Azure decides to upgrade your software and your app isn't ready for that, you have to fix your app. So there are disadvantages to it. So again, it's one of those things, is it worth the disadvantage to use this platform? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's easier to just update the app if the software gets updated than to try to make sure that you stay, or whatever. It just, sometimes it's easier to let them control it. So we already looked at that one. So does anybody have any questions right now over what we've covered so far?
Do not know.
All right, so we will go on a 15-minute break or so. Let me see. I'd say we'll go ahead and come back at 10:30 Pacific, or that would be 1:30 Eastern. So it's slightly more than 15 minutes. But just to make it on the half hour or make it easier. I will pause the recording and stop the share because I don't want to screw my thing up. So, so stop share and pause the recording. All right. So what we're going to do now is, let me add this link again to the Zoom chat. And what we're going to do is we're going to play with these 3 folders specifically right here. So there's 3 breakout rooms open. I figured I'd let you guys choose whether you want to do a small, medium, or large business. Try to split yourselves up pretty evenly if you can. If I need to, I'll move people around if I have to. The object is inside each of these folders. So one person should share their screen. While the rest of you, talk about it, is you're going to do this group activity. You're going to read about the different cloud services models and the types, and they're linked right here for you, which is nice. And then you're going to actually create a company within your category. So if you chose the small business one, you're going to create a small business. And you're going to evaluate which service model and type of cloud service you're going to use. So on the bottom tab, there's the activity tab. Is what you're going to actually fill out. And you're just going to fill out these questions. Let me see. So we're going to give you guys, let me see. I'll give you guys a good 20 minutes or so to play with this and come up with something, and then I'll bring everybody back. And then we'll have, so designate a representative, if you can, from your business to present your findings, so to speak, or what you guys decided and the why. So you guys should have at the bottom of your screen the ability to join any breakout room. Let me know if you guys do not see that ability.
See it.
Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording for this. I'll hop in and out of the breakout rooms just to give you guys a hand as needed. I'm going to pause the recording for this because no need to record a blank screen because that's probably what I'll be on most of the time. And I'll stop share as well. And then go ahead and feel free to go in to one of those breakout rooms and build a business.
Sorry, where do you? Oh, okay. I just said breakout rooms. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So what did y'all think of that?
Interesting. It's fun.
It's interesting to think about how you would have to think as a business in terms of just as your little own lonely self. Obviously for us on our own by ourselves, you know, cloud makes a whole lot more sense than a server, but when you're thinking big business, sometimes you have to adjust your thinking a little bit. So so who would like to go first? Which business side would like to play first and share with us what y'all did?
I'll go first. Small business.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Sure. All right. So there we go. So our company name was super creative. It was it's Ninja Dojo, and it is a small business. And while we understand that small businesses can be hundreds of people, ours was only 50 employees, and we only have one location. Well, let me actually increase the size of this. And we are geographically located in north central US, so somewhere in the northeast, possibly New York. We are a small business, so for cloud service, we went with the software as a service. The advantages for this would be that business, we make the request to the host, and the host, they deliver. You know, we ask them to do something, and they're like, okay, we'll see what we can do. Our focus really is on a service and a product as opposed to infrastructure. So we just ask them to handle that side of the house, and we hope that they can do it. Disaster recovery is really just out of our hands. We hope that they can handle all that, and we just put it all in their hands. So talking about the big six, and again, that's all in their hands. We put our trust in our cloud computing in their hands. So since our host handles the cloud services, then we expect that we're going to be able to reach a bigger audience. Now, unfortunately, disadvantage, there's less control. If we're the type of business, or maybe the type of CEO or somebody, CIO, that is like, well, I have this kind of in mind for it, then you don't have that capability at your business. Personally, you may have to hope that whoever you go with has that capability. Otherwise, you yourself cannot micromanage that sort of thing. You just have to hope that they can do it. The type of cloud that we'll be using, well, initially, to start, we'll go for a free trial, and because a free trial is more enticing. It would bring customers in, give them a feel for what they're getting, and then once customers are established, then they're like, okay, well, I like what I see, and they'll go for more a pay-as-you-go model. They pay for the services that they want, and they'll if they're satisfied, then they'll keep paying. Otherwise, yeah, that's how business goes, for small business anyways.
Very true. Very true. Okay. Does anybody have any opinions on why they chose what they chose, or if they think they should have chosen something different for a small business? I happen to agree. I think that looks. Someone was about to say something.
No, I was basically going to say the only thing that we necessarily disagreed or like had like a slight kerfuffle with was basically what cloud type we would necessarily, or what type of cloud we would use, just based off of the company. But otherwise, everything else was pretty succinct.
I definitely agree for a small business that you'd probably want to start with a free trial. Typically, what the type would be like a private, public, or the hybrid. But when you're using the software as a service, things are slightly different. They're not quite as cut and dry as that. So the free trial is definitely something that you would want to try. I definitely agree with that. And then probably a pay as you go because it's a small business and a lot less overhead. Okay. Thank you guys. So how about we go with the medium next since small started?
All right, I can do that.
All right.
Here. Group activity 1, share. All right. So for our cloud, our company is called 9. Number of employees, of course, is between 50 to 100. We only have one location, and it's in the Bay Area. Our model was going to be like a technical training site, like Udemy or something like that. We chose to do the PaaS, platform as a service. There's a multiple advantages of doing this. We didn't, because we really just want to focus on having our instructors put up videos and trainings and building out a curriculum and everything like that. We don't want to have to deal with a lot of the basic infrastructure of building on the network and servers and everything. So of course, as new classes are added, videos are recorded and stuff like that, the system's going to be able to grow. We can actually expand it out, especially if we get more viewers and everything, more students coming in. We can we don't have to know exactly how many servers we're going to need, or if there's some that's not that is not being used, we don't have to pay for that. So it's a lot better and scalability and everything, elasticity, so it can grow and shrink as the need arises. And because it is a platform as a service, so everything is going to be secure, and it's also going to be redundant and highly available. So if, let's say, wherever we have our availability zone in goes down, then there might be there should be another one that has an availability zone to keep it up, so that way our website never actually goes down and students can still continue to utilize it. Allows us to focus on building out the site and everything. We don't need to hire dedicated people to manage the servers or the cost of keeping those servers cool and running, because that is definitely an overhead. We get to utilize the cutting edge development tools that comes with the access to the cloud and everything. Of course, there's less hidden fees, and you don't have to build up again your own data system, redundancies and everything for disasters and everything. There's not too many disadvantages of the cloud model. One, of course, is you're going to have less control over the system, the entire system. But if your system or your model doesn't require it to have it, then it's not really too much of a disadvantage there. But you will need to hire people that do have knowledge of the cloud infrastructure, Azure, AWS, whatever you're going to utilize. For the type, we went with the cloud platform as a service because it is, we don't want to have to deal with any kind of building out of the actual infrastructure, physical infrastructure, because it is a training site. it allows us to really focus on our core business with cost control, the availability, geolocation, redundancies, elasticity, everything that I mentioned before. Those are really the main reasons why we chose to go with the cloud over on premises.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on the medium business? I would tend to agree that platform is probably, at least to start off with, is probably a good base, especially for the type of business that you guys chose to run. You definitely want to have some control, but you don't want complete control. But you want to get your stuff up there and out there quickly, and platform can help you do that for sure. So I definitely think, and cloud-based is always, I think that's always a better option anyways. But yeah, I agree.
All right.
So how about the large business?
I can do that one. Let me see.
All right.
All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So our company name was Vandalay Industries, and we had about 1,000 employees. We have 30 locations, and we're global located. So we're all over the country, all over the world. Our business model is import export, and then we chose the infrastructure as a service. We just thought for the advantages for us, it's flexible and scalable. For our size, we need the size, and then we don't need them to run our servers for us, as we have enough people to do that. It's just that's going to be a disadvantage for us at the beginning, is higher upfront cost with more training involved. But the infrastructure as a service gives us more flexibility. It's scalable. We don't need, like I said, we don't need the servers, and then we can do rapid deployment. We also have an advantage of still, maintaining what we want with our information. And like really the disadvantage is there's only the only disadvantage that of infrastructure as a service that we saw was the higher upfront costs and more training involved initially. But the size of our company, we figure having these people we are pretty much already have these people, or we can hire them and pay them to, run the services that we need instead of farming them out to a dip like Azure or something like that. And then we chose a hybrid cloud. It kind of gives us the benefit of both a public and a private. The private side, we would run our day-to-day, and then the public would be more like if we run on a server space or anything like that, we can add it easily. Yeah, and then that's why our decision, despite the higher upfront cost of training, we have more agility between countries and systems that will offset, our higher upfront cost. But it's easier for us to maintain and, get our information across the globe much quicker with an infrastructure as a service model.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, on the large business?
You can also go with, for an advantages of the cloud model, you can deploy your sites or your things over to each individual country that you're actually in. So that way, let's say you're in the United States and your main corporate office is in Australia. Instead of having to, from the US, go all the way to Australia, you can actually deploy something in the US. So that way it has less latency to get to your server, to the information and everything.
Absolutely.
Maybe not each country, because Europe is basically a whole lot smaller than United States. Maybe each continent would work better.
But definitely the regionability aspect of it would definitely be a plus. I definitely agree with what y'all chose as well. I think for large companies that there does need to be that hybrid effect, because there's going to be some things that they need complete control over. Usually it's probably going to be like in the head office. but there's going to be stuff that they need complete control over, including the servers. That's just by default with a large company. They're not going to want to trust a Joe Schmo down the street, or whatever, or even Azure as it for that purpose, with some of their proprietary information or applications if it's internal to the company. But I definitely agree infrastructure as a structure would probably be the best option, because as a large company, you're not going to have the same each application or website or whatever that you guys deploy. It's not going to need the same things. It might need different OS capabilities, and with infrastructure, you have that capability of changing that easier than the other two. So I definitely agree with you guys. So what all did you guys, how do you guys feel overall about this activity?
Can I stop share?
I know I asked that already, but did it give you any insights, or does it make you appreciate the cloud or not like the cloud or things like that? How do you guys feel overall about it?
Just helps understand the services for me.
That was cool, and working as a group is always useful.
It is.
You can, and the brainstorming, were we supposed to write our names on the sheets?
Yeah, just names and emails, just to make sure that we got everybody.
I don't think our group did it. I'm not sure.
It's okay, because Will collect them at the end of during his half after lunch anyways. So I was just trying to help him out a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of services that Azure has. It is very hard to look at it, and let me see if I can pull up. That one's that one. That was for, I'm trying to remember where I saw it before. There's definitely a whole lot of things that go into the Azure bundle, I guess you can say. Overall, there's a lot going on. They have a lot of services. There's a lot of things that you guys can do. One thing that we're going to cover now between now and when we break for lunch is some of these things like the regions, availability zones, and region pairs, some of the architectural components of it in general. So this is the one I wanted right here. So these are some of the different things that I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have heard of Tailwind before. Tailwind is, oh my God, it just lost my brain. It is a service that many of us have used before for certain things, but the management groups and resources, subscriptions, all this thing, this is all something that the organizations can control at levels. So obviously at the top down of the hierarchy is your management groups. So who's going to be in overall control of what said company is going to have? After that, the next tier down would be like the subscriptions. You can divvy out who has access to what subscriptions. So maybe the marketing group only needs certain things. They don't need access to like the app type services. They just need certain things. Where the DevOps side, well, they're probably going to need more of the app stuff. And then you've got your resource groups, and that can be broken down like you see in the picture here. It can be broken down into what do each of those sides of the house, like the DevOps, for example, you've got front end and you've got back end. Maybe you've got certain people in control of each one. So you can give them that resource group set of permissions to access those things. And it goes right on down to the resources. And the resources are the instances that you create, like the virtual machines, the storage, the databases, things like that. Your resource groups, are a combination of all of those resources that they're just like a logical container. So if you think of like your HTML page, your resources are your image tag, your A tag, trying to think of some of the other basic ones, your form input labels, things like that. Your resource group would be like your div. It contains all those little resources that are like each other. So we have an image or a form would maybe be a resource group, and inside that form are all the inputs and labels. Just trying to put it into like a web development kind of aspect of looking at how it would be. And then your subscription would be like your HTML document. It's like the overall, who has control over all the divs on the page. And then the management group would be where you deploy it to, for example. Or who has control over the repository, maybe is a better way to describe it. So like in my lectures, I own the repositories for my lectures. But you guys can clone my lectures, my lecture repositories, and now you own it. And you have full control over the subscriptions, the resource groups, and the resources. But only I have control over mine. So it just helps you manage access and policies and what you want to do. And one company can have multiple subscriptions. Like my GitHub, when I log into my main GitHub, I have access to a bunch of different organizations. Each of those organizations have a bunch of different repositories. And inside those repositories are the resources that are required for each one. Another way to break it down is like that. So, and I can give, like Corey happens to be my TA right now for Web Fundamentals. I can give Corey, I can either give him access, like member access to the organization, or I can make him a contributor to a repository, which means he now has, I give him subscription level access. So now he has access to the repository and to the resources within that repository. Or maybe Lawrence is working with me. He needs access to my organization, not just one repository. He needs the whole thing. So now he has access to all these repositories and all their resources within. So just another way of looking at it, just how to break things down. And that's the nice thing that Azure does for us, is that it does allow us to break things down into who owns what and where. Now the regions, and I'm going to pronounce your name incorrectly. Is it Meltem? Did I say that right?
Yes, everybody calls me Mel. You can go with Mel. That's okay.
I will go with that because I'll pronounce it wrong otherwise.
No problem.
So just like Mel said, there are specific regions and availability zones, and then something called region pairs. So the regions is this map here. So let's go over here. Let's pull this guy up. It was in each of the business folders, if it loads. Come on, Ralphie, baby, you can do it.
That's how I feel when people's screens are trying to load when they're sharing it on Discord.
All right, while that tries to load, we'll have to look at the small one. Okay, so as Mel mentioned, there are a lot of centers in Europe, but look at Africa, look at South America. Africa has 2 regions. South America has 1. But if I am a global business, like the large business was, I do want to have that availability to be able to deploy certain applications to, say, that Brazil South region, because maybe one of my companies happens to be stationed down there, not stationed, sorry, I'm thinking military again, happens to be located down there. So therefore, its customer base needs quicker access to those applications. So I'm going to make sure that I have a deployment down there. Australia's got a few. It's doing better than South America, so hey. But there are regions based all over. Can anyone tell me why they're important to have these regions?
Latency. Redundancy, as well as being able to have access while people, in less latency between people in that area.
Yes, speed is the thing, I believe.
Yep, that is definitely a
And
big thing, is
availability.
speed. But there's also that whole redundancy. So the more regions that are available to you, the better redundancy you have for your applications, your data and stuff like that. So Azure has a lot of global regions, and they have more than any other cloud provider. That's one of the reasons why they're the new up and coming thing in the world right now, is because they do have a lot of global regions. But they do allow you to bring your applications closer to your users, no matter where they are. So that means that when they go to access my app in Australia, there's a region that's closer to them than the region that's in the United States. There are some special regions. Did this one load yet? Nope. There are some special regions, and they are extremely dedicated, and for certain of these regions, they are only allowed to be used by certain people. Clearly, I'm sure you can figure out that the top one there, the DoD ones, or the US government ones, I cannot deploy an app to the US government Iowa region. I don't have that much power. I'm not the government. So they are dedicated regions. They're special. But they have to be, they're operated by the government. They have certain compliance things. I have to get permission to deploy to those, which I don't suspect I'd ever need. But there are other, a few other ones, the China East, China North, they're available through unique partnerships. These are the ones that Microsoft doesn't maintain. But they are available to Azure customers depending on their needs. Obviously, as you can imagine, this top section here, these are they're strictly for government agencies and partners, and they're going to be pretty darn secure. So it's going to be hard to get into them and have access to them. So an availability zone is where you have those data centers. So, and this is where we also start to come into our region pairs. So this is a region. So we'll say, let me see, what's a region that's up here? We'll talk about the Brazil one because he's by himself. It's easy to read that one. So in Brazil, in that region, there are probably 3 availability zones. There are probably 3 different data centers is what they're called, or kind of like separate data centers, so that one region already has its own redundancy set up by having these guys connected to each other inside that Brazil region. So that means that my data that I deploy to this Brazil region is already split up among these 3 zones, these 3 different data centers. They have independent power, independent cooling, and networking, but they're also in a little bit of an isolation boundary, so they're kind of contained within themselves, so that if one goes down, the others can keep working, which is nice. They help keep each other in check, I guess you could say. And they're directly connected a little bit better. Not every region is going to have these availability zones, but most of them will. The bigger regions obviously will have more zones within them. Brazil probably only has maybe the 3 availability zones, for example, as opposed to, say, North Central US that probably has like 100 zones because it's a popular one, for example. So like we were saying, this allows for that redundancy. It keeps the mission critical applications up and running, because if one zone goes down, it's got its region zones to pick up the pace. If you're at all familiar with electricity, think of your breaker box. the breaker box controls all the electricity in your house, but if one breaker trips, the whole house doesn't go down, just that section. In this case, it doesn't share the load and let them go up on the other case, but it just, in a broad sense of the term, that one breaker will trip, not the entire house, which is a good thing. We don't want the whole house to go out of power just because we overloaded one circuit. We just want the one circuit to go out. In this case, it's kind of the same thing, except that the others do pick up the load. So, and the region pairs are the data centers. They're the availability zones are created using one or more data centers. So these zones, so this zone probably has, I guess, 3 data centers is the way they're describing it. And it's a region pair. They're all connected directly to each other. They help each other out. And then they go into the larger region and stuff like that, so that large disasters can help. So that for example, the North Central and which ones are the Canada Central, they're probably going to be a region pair. So if the North Central has a disaster, Canada Central can pick up the load. So they're going to be directly paired with each other to help offset the load, or maybe West and North will help each other out. But there could be combinations of those. They could all be connected together as well. It's all to help keep mission critical applications up and running. A lot of redundancy, a lot of connections. I wouldn't want to look at the blueprints. So here's the region pairs, like I was saying. So we have those 2 regions, like here's the North US or North Central, and then the West US. Those 2 regions are a region pair. They talk directly to each other on a constant basis. And they're probably next to another region pair. Here you can see the West US is paired with East US, and Southeast Asia is paired with East Asia. Again, like I said, to help that redundancy. Can anybody see a disadvantage to this?
Maybe ping or like
Potentially, I guess. I mean, off the top of my head, it's kind of hard to come up with a disadvantage to this. All I see is redundancy. I see that if somebody goes out, somebody else is going to pick up the load for me. It just makes sense.
It does. I think the only thing I can really see is that with the redundancy, you do have to have more storage space, so that way you can, have the, because it's on multiple locations.
Well, that's part of the nice thing about it, is that like each region, like if they have these availability zones, like my one application is probably going to be split up along these 3 regions. These are availability zones, I mean. So it's all within the same region, but it's split up along data centers so that my data is not all on one server. But all else fails, if those servers do become full, they can add more, or it'll roll over to its region pair. There's always more coming up anyways. They're building more all the time. As the world becomes more and more online and more cloud centric, I guarantee that South Africa is not going to have just the one region for long. Well, maybe South Africa, or not South Africa, I meant South America. I don't know how much technology goes in and out of there. I'm assuming not much, since there's not a whole lot there.
I have a question. Could caching will be a problem? Like while I was reaching a website at Japan, and something went wrong, and Taiwan picked it up, but Taiwan had the cache of the site, and I'm not using the latest version from Taiwan. Would there be such a thing?
Absolutely. So I forgot to mention that earlier when we were talking about the internet. So your computer has cache information, not actual cash and money. Otherwise, that'd be awesome. So your computer stores a snapshot of a website when you first visit it, but your ISP does as well. So if you clear your cache on your computer, it's going to go to your ISP and pick up the cache from there. However, the ISP has something else that almost constantly clears its cache, or it has some things built in that it automatically says, okay, someone's accessing this site from my cache. I need to go and pick up a new copy to make sure that I really am up to date, because I'm just an ISP, I'm just the middleman. So that is a thing. So sometimes you might have to hit refresh if something doesn't look right. If it's a site you visit often, it doesn't hurt to hit refresh when you go there every once in a while, or do a hard reset and clear your cache. There are ways to clear the cache through the ISP, but us lowly people that don't work at ISPs don't have control over that. But when we do a hard reset or a hard reload from our computers, it actually does force the ISPs to do a hard to like clear that cache of that website as well. But that is definitely something that could potentially be a problem. If you often go through the East Asia region and for some reason that one went down and you're going through the China East region, but the last time you loaded that website through the China East region was like a year ago, it might very well have a cached version. Most of the time it's not a problem because they do go fetch the new data when you go to get there, but it's always a possibility.
The only thing I can think of as a possible disadvantage is because you have the data split between all three. If there is a problem, it might be harder to find the source because it's so split across and not condensed down.
Definitely a possibility. Yeah. But because they do share data so often, that's one of the nice things about having the way they have these set up as pairs and availability zones, is they share data so often, or they talk to each other so often, that being able to pick up what got lost or dropped because of an outage, for example, is fairly easy. So we already did talk about the life cycle and all of these things. The nice thing about this is you can choose which ones you want, resources you want. If I'm just doing an HTML website, I probably wouldn't really use the cloud in general, but you know, I can choose. I really don't need a database for that. So I'm not going to add that resource to, you know, my cloud because I don't need a database. But maybe one of my other websites do. So if that's part of a different resource manager, then I'll add it to that one. And this is where like the Azure account holder, that's that management level, that's the company owner. So like if I own my business, I'm going to be the Azure account holder. Say just because you guys are first on my list that I see Corey, Lawrence, and Mark are the first on my little thing over here. So I want Corey to be in charge of all the dev things, Lawrence gets testing, and Mark gets production. So they're in charge of those subscriptions and all of the resources and resource groups that are contained within. So for example, my GitHub, I own it, but I have these three organizations. Corey's in charge. Corey has this access to this one, Lawrence this one, and Mark this one. So they have access to all the repositories and all those repository resources that are inside them. I have access to all of it.
One question: are you still on the what is a region pair?
Oh, darn it! It did it again. I think my limit's about 45 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. Let me fix it. All right, if I get left out, I'll be right back, I promise. Ooh, I think it worked right this time. I'm still recording. And you guys can still hear me, correct?
Yep.
All right, good. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Sorry about that. I really wish I could figure out what it's doing that and how to stop it. All I can think of is it's the live transcription, but I don't know how to stop it. So that's okay. We figured out. So like I said, the account holder, the Azure account holder is the management group. And then those subscriptions are just what each department, I guess you could say, has access to. DevOps and test, they're probably going to need slightly different things in their subscription. Test is going to need obviously access to some testing stuff. For example, dev is going to need a lot more probably. Production is going to need something else. They don't need all the nitty gritty resources. They just need to be able to deploy stuff. So there are other types of subscriptions. You know, there's like the regular organizational structures like I was just talking about in terms of like the ID department, things like that. Billing might have its own subscription. They just take care of the billing of the account, which obviously they're not going to need a database on their side. They're just dealing with the billing of the account. So there's different types of subscriptions, which is really nice. And all it is just a way to delineate, I think that's the right word, the power of the Azure account across departments or members so that those who need what they need can get it done. All right. So here's another example of the hierarchy. Obviously, certain things are certain departments or whatever are going to need certain things versus others. So it just depends on what each group is going to need. Are there any questions about this part of it? Okay. So if I remember correctly, where'd my thingy go? Not that one. This one. That was my, okay, I pulled up this one. So that is all that I have for you guys for this afternoon. Or morning, excuse me, it's afternoon for me. It's morning for some of y'all. So I can let you guys go 15 minutes or 10 minutes earlier or so for lunch, if you guys would like. If you guys have any questions about what we've covered already today, I can hang around for another couple minutes or so. But that's all I have right now. Will be joining you guys for the afternoon. I'll give you a quick preview of the afternoon agenda. So there's going to be another group activity. And then you're going to do some exam practices. And exam practices are kind of fun and kind of annoying all at the same time because the questions are annoying. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that?
No, but thank you.
Okay. I will be ending the meeting in about 10 minutes or so. Because I actually have to go do some other things. So I actually have to end the meeting, and then you guys can just use the same link that you used to get in here this morning or earlier. The slides will be shared with in the email, I believe. They will be going out after all of this. But like I said, I will have to end the meeting so that the recordings can convert and everything like that. But use the same link to join back up again in an hour. So at 1 o'clock Pacific time frame, Or if you're an East Coaster like me, that would be 4 o'clock. 1 + 3 is 4. Yeah, 4 o'clock. Math, not my strong suit. I will go ahead and stop the recording now if you guys want to just